My name is Jeanne Boge. I am a professor of nursing at Western Norway University of Applied Science. This fourth and final video about praxeology deals with praxeological interviews and observations. In the ways of the world, Bourdieu has accounted for how to do interviews, and his study, The Disenchantment of World from Algeria, is an example of how Bourdieu did observation. In this video, interviews and observations are presented together because an observation of an agent's social action usually is combined with an interview to get data about the agent's position and economic, cultural, and social capitals. Furthermore, a face-to-face interview includes observation of behavior, clothing, and the like. And during an interview in the home, you will gain data on how an agent positions himself in relation to neighborhood and housing, and data on taste in the form of furniture, pictures, books, etc. A combination of interview and observation can also be useful because agents, without being aware of it, can position themselves about a practice as they think the current practice should be done, and not how the practice is carried out. One example is a study I did on bodily cleanliness in a nursing home. Interviews with healthcare workers indicated that the residents' feet were washed every day. Observations, however, showed that feet usually were washed every 2 weeks. Solid background knowledge about the research object and the social field is crucial for accurate interviews and observations. It is an advantage to conduct a register-based analysis of the research object before doing interviews and observations. However, this is not required. One can also historicize the research object using data from ethnographic studies, historical studies, and other kinds of literature. Bourdieu sees the research interview as a special case of the everyday conversation, a social relationship where one tries to understand and explain human actions. But conducting an interview like an everyday conversation in which one accompanies the interviewed in their life story and at the same time holds on to the common thread that is theoretically relevant. This requires extensive preparations. Interview guides can be good tools for this, but should not be followed slavishly, as the researcher must listen to what the interviewed says and form new questions in continuation of what has been said. Bourdieu argues that interviews should be conducted in a way that give the interviewed insight into structural conditions that can explain as to how it is that he has the position he has in the actual social field. A form of auto-social analysis. This should be done with an intellectual love that brings out the agent's points of view and the agent's unique life story. Like a psychoanalysis, but on a societal level, so that one reveals societal dominance and imprints that individuals were unaware of in the first place. Thus, interviews can form the basis for liberation and changes, both individually and structurally. How many interviews and observations one should conduct is both a professional and a financial question. One interview or one observation that generates many adequate data can have a higher value than many data-weak interviews and observations. A life history interview can be conducted with only one agent who are interviewed several times. In praxeological studies, verbatim transcripts are not important. What is important is that the researcher translates what has been said and what has not been said into a reader-friendly text. Sometimes one starts with an observation and then asks for permission to do interview. At other times, an interview is done first, and then one asks for permission to observe current candidates. In praxeological studies, as in other studies, national and international guidelines for research, ethics, anonymization, and data storage is followed. Bourdieu argues that the least possible, for the least possible professional and social distance between the interviewer and the interviewed person, because it can be challenging if the researcher and the person interviewed do not have a common point of reference. For example, talking about low cultural, economic, and social capital with people with plenty of such capitals may be difficult. In such cases, the interviewer can exercise unintended symbolic violence. Asymmetry is often unavoidable, but the researcher can reduce the asymmetry by showing genuine interest in the interviewee's life story. This was the last of 4 videos about praxeology. The first video was about Bourdieu and some of his key theories. The second video was about praxeological epistemology and construction of habitus. The third video was about praxeological analysis of documents, while the fourth and final video was about praxeological interviews and observations.